Was that offensive? I can't even tell at this point. Godzilla, Gojira, Wendell St. Germain, all completely real and equally common names for Toho's undisputed king of kaiju. I usually like to do a big, energetic intro to these videos, get everyone on the same wavelength, but do I really need to explain Godzilla? 70 plus years and thousands of movies, TV shows, anime, cartoons, toys, comic books, the character is, for lack of a more efficient or effective term, iconic. Whether you love him or hate him, he stands right up there alongside pop culture's greatest and most recognizable characters. Atticus Finch, Han Solo, Charles Foster Kane, Godzilla. Ellen Ripley, James Bond, Indiana Jones, Godzilla. Hannibal Lecter, Norman Bates, Scarlett O'Hara, Father-mucking Godzilla. His adventures have run the gamut from emotional to genuinely horrifying, from incredibly awesome to very, very silly. Didn't really take much to get me interested in the series as a kid. You're telling me there are movies where one giant monster fights other giant monsters to protect and or destroy the people of Japan, depending on the day of the week, in which laser beams are shot at each other and skyscrapers are knocked over like little Lego towers. I need to be watching these as soon as possible. While not quite as obsessed as an adult, I'd still describe myself as a middle-level fan. I'm no Matt McMuscles or anyone like that, but I have a couple dozen of the movies and would like to have a complete collection one day. The odd poster or figurine. I enjoy the American films for what they are and actually think the 2014 one is legitimately good. And I even made a video about one of the Godzilla video games, which you are watching right now. And what about video games starring the big man? According to the wiki, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 games, which is simultaneously a lot and yet less than I would have imagined for a property this big. Some are beloved, some are infamous, many are exclusive to Japan, but among the ones we do have, few give as warm and fuzzy a feeling as Pipeworks Software's 2002 mini-classic Godzilla, Destroy All Monsters Melee.
Moment.
I swear, I'm not just going to pepper this video with silly movie clips, easy as that may be. Speaking of easy, you'd think it'd be the simplest thing in the world to make a fun game starring a several-story-tall monster lizard who can shoot Chernobyl confetti from his mouth. Yet a history of failed side-scrollers, rampage simulators, and whatever the hell was happening here shows that it's actually pretty difficult, at least in terms of making something that will sustain a full-force playthrough. For my money, a good kaiju game in general needs three things: charismatic monsters to play as, a sense of grand scale, and a gameplay engine that lets you feel that size and strength, a naked, unashamed power trip. And it is these three strengths that Destroy All Monsters plays to brilliantly and made it, for a while, a mainstay of many a Gamecube-fueled multiplayer party night. Or so I heard. I play all my fighting games and fighting-adjacent games single-player because other people scare and confuse me. Okay, so, cards on the table. This is a B-ass-B game, meant to be played purely for fun. It is not some PvP masterpiece with snappy controls and balanced characters. This is controller-rumbling, building-tossing slobber knockers starring the big man and his rogues gallery of giant mutants, nature guardians, aliens, and robots, all imbued with the agility of a tumbleweed, a very large tumbleweed, and the fluidity of molasses, a very large molasses. The monsters in Destroy All Monsters control as one would expect moving landmasses to control. They're clumsy and slow, turn on a quarter, and each hit comes out with more wind-up than a music box. And usually that would be a kiss of death for a game like this, hell, for most games, really. But here it does feel intentional, a feature, and not a bug. I'd usually be very skeptical of someone trying to dismiss bad or frustrating mechanics as part of the experience or totally intentional. Unless you're Suda51 or Hideo Kojima, that always smacks of desperate justification, but here it serves the secondary purpose of selling the weight and enormity of the monsters. They all run like I do, But of course, something that big would struggle to rise above a brisk jog. Each swing comes out slow and heavy, but also with an absolutely thunderous impact, with stellar animations and whamming, whomping sound effects selling you on the titanic force of each blow. And when something does land hard, an uppercut sending one monster flying, or seeing one get blasted back several city blocks by a fully charged beam, you believe in that push, in that violence. Every hook or tail swing or shoulder check is an explosion of serotonin that keeps battles consistently entertaining, even if the game has literally one trick up its sleeve the whole way through. In the interest of honesty, I will admit that sometimes the controls can be a bit too plodding, making it hard to position or get the attacks out that you want, and that doesn't feel like it was intentional. There are more than a few times where you'll find yourself doing big 1-2s to the thin air behind you instead of your opponent. Battles take place in large, building-filled arenas where you are free to run, hop, fly, bounce, or teleport your way about as you try to beat the ever-loving Christ out of your opponent. The humans, ever the bootstrap of the series unless we're talking Shin or -1, do their best to interrupt with rockets, guns, helicopters, and freeze rays, the same kind that did in Destroya back in the day. Fun reference. And while they're easily dispatched, you'd be surprised how quick that damage can pile up if you're not paying attention. There's also a modest collection of power-ups, health and energy boosts, a rage boost that increases your attack and grants access to a sort of blast move. Not enough to really count as a super, but unique to each character and generally good for getting some breathing room. Most interesting is the Mothra Airstrike.
Mothra Airstrike!
See? This one, as you may predict, calls baddest insect bitch Mothra in to do some extra damage to your opponent. There's a little strategy involved in trying to keep the enemy open to her line of sight, but for the most part it's just a fun little way to get some extra shots in on more squirrely or mobile opponents. Can't forget about the buildings. While many just get crushed in your wake and others can act as barriers or impact zones for tossed enemies, many can also just be picked up and hurled wholesale at other monsters for a fair chunk of damage and an instant knockdown. Your battles will take you around the world to such exotic locales as Los Angeles and Osaka. Also Osaka. Multiple Londons, scenic Monster Island, and that most classic of climactic arenas, Seattle. Because when I think of fateful, world-shattering duels, I think the former home of the Supersonics and the setting of cinematic classics A Guy Thing and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Set arenas are cordoned off by large green force fields that will blow you back with prejudice if you touch them, and can be equal parts irritating or useful depending on if you're the bumper or the bumpy. The reason for all this monster mashery can be found in the game's adventure mode. The premise is charmingly simple. The Vortox, intergalactic conquerors of questionable effectiveness,
Am I still on?
have decided to take over the Earth and are mind-controlling our own homegrown menagerie of giant beasts to do so. Luckily, one of the monsters, your chosen Kaiju, has slipped its mental bonds and is now ready to take on his fellows for the sake of the planet's future. Look, calling this a story mode would be charitable to the point of deception, but it's not really a demerit. It provides a skeleton of an explanation for the featured creature's sudden bursts of violence, and the cutscenes, limited as they are schlocky enough to elicit a genuine smile.
We have come to seize control of your planet and plunder its resources for our own purposes. It's what we do.
And hey, the credits give the game an excuse to use the famous main theme from the movies, which honestly makes the mode worth it all on its own. As for the monsters themselves, the playable cast is admittedly quite small, clocking in at only 11 Kaiju, and 2 of them are just Big G himself. Still, the lineup is a pretty solid mix of classic foes and more obscure pulls. Famous rivals like King Ghidorah and Mechagodzilla run fang with well-loved regulars like Gigan and Anguirus. Popular one-timers like Orga and Destroya round out the cast alongside famous jobbers like Rodan and Megalon. And while the cast is definitely missing some big-time favorites like the above-mentioned but strangely unplayable Mothra or perennial cheeseball icon Jet Jaguar, there's someone here for most fans. Probably the most exciting thing about the cast is how well Pipeworks have managed to differentiate them from one another. On the surface, things are fairly standard. Each monster has a collection of jabs, kicks, spins, grabs, and various appendage strikes, plus access to a chargeable beam attack, said beams differing in range and intensity depending on the monster and the amount of time Z is held down. The movesets are fairly well tailored to each monster as well. Gigan sweeps his scythe arms in wide arcs and body slams with his buzzsaw belly, while Orga is a straight bruiser and can easily and effectively grapple with his horrible yaoi hands, and Rodan favors hit-and-run sky tactics to take advantage of his aerial mobility. And in a lesser game, that would be the end of it. But the devil is most certainly in the details here, and most monsters have multiple unique traits or skills that make them stand out even further from the others. Megalon, longtime whipping boy of the fandom because... reasons. Doesn't inspire confidence with his tiny drill hands and sluggish movement, but he can stun enemies with the old Toscanini hotfoot and has the extremely effective ability to burrow, zipping across the arena and emerging with a quick, very hard to avoid grab, which only gets harder in dense free-for-alls. Rodan's above-mentioned hit-and-run tactics are helped by being the only flyer who doesn't burn energy while in the air, and Destroya can forego his laser attack in favor of these large, sweeping energy blade attacks that go right through buildings and guards. Gigan can just straight teleport across the arena, and anyone who attacks Anguirus from behind takes damage and may even be stunned for a bit, something I somehow missed in all my years playing this until recording for this very video. He even has a unique command to quickly turn around, so overly aggressive enemies end up hurting themselves, which he can then follow up with back-facing attacks. Everyone has something that will appeal to different playstyles, and it lends what could have been a standard cast of burly brawler types surprisingly robust and distinct playstyles. If the game has one big problem, it's a lack of content. Aside from story mode, you have a standard survival mode and a somewhat more interesting destruction mode where you and another player compete to see who can cause the most damage to a stage, as befits a game starring cinema's most prolific city smasher. And there's the gallery where you can unlock little bonus production materials, but even then this game can be finished in a long weekend. And that's about all there is to say. Destroy All Monsters would get an Xbox port the following year that added Kiryu to the mix and some bonus modes and stages, but was essentially the same game, and the series proper would continue with the also well-liked Godzilla Save the Earth for the PS2, which I've always meant to play but have never gotten around to, and the somewhat more contentious Godzilla Unleashed on the Wii, which I do have and may revisit someday in the future if I'm feeling really, really energetic. Destroy All Monsters Melee is as classic a 6th-gen cult game as you can get, not made to win awards or set the world on fire, but full of enough charm and chutzpah coupled with deceptively hefty and highly enjoyable gameplay to give any group of Titan mashing enthusiasts their money's worth. Smashing cities is fun, giant monsters are cool, Godzilla is rad, and this game brings all that and more to the table, and really, if that's not enough for you, you just might be in the wrong hobby. Grab it, play a few rounds, have a good time, thank me later.
Your monster has defeated our ultimate weapon and escaped. Our campaign to seize your planet has been thwarted. For now.